Okay, so I'm going to give it all away for free. The secrets to the universe. What is LinkedIn? So this is going to be kind of like Jeopardy. So you can try and guess what the answer is, and how do you answer in Jeopardy with a question. What is LinkedIn? What is my best friend? LinkedIn is your best friend. This is how you're going to get all your jobs from now on. You should be on LinkedIn. You should be starting your network. You should be including as many people as possible in your network. Why? Because those people, the people literally sitting next to you right here in this room, the people next to you in your classrooms, are going to get you your next job. And that is really kind of cool. Because when a whole bunch of us were laid off at Yahoo, what do we start doing? We start contacting all our friends. And eventually I got 3 offers, one from a former colleague, one from a former colleague, and one from a former roommate. So my roommate actually got me a job offer. So really, when you think about it, the connections that you make here will actually get you your next job. If you're not on LinkedIn, get on LinkedIn. Please, please, please. Definitely worth it. Okay, now that you've got the job, which company are you going to go to? You really want to go to the company that has the largest R&D budget available. And this is very important because the companies who put money into R&D are looking to the future. Those companies that don't put any money in R&D are only looking at the present and the past. So you look at Corningware, the people who developed the glass that's on all the screens of your cell phones. That product was actually developed in the 1950s. So Corning actually had the technology all this time, but did not have a problem to solve using this technology until Steve Jobs came knocking and said, oh, by the way, I need a technology that can withstand scratches, that won't break if you drop it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, you can still break this stuff. It is still glass. But it's highly annealed. It's a special composite. They put special materials in it. And so this is really where you want to be. Somebody who has all that stuff looking forward is much better than somebody who isn't doing it. While you're working at that company, what do you want to be doing? You want to be working on the new project. Why? Because the new project is exciting, and that's where everybody wants to be, and it's competitive, and so you want to get on the new project. And that's often the kind of hard thing to do when you're just starting out. So if you want to work on the new project, and you don't want to go to the big company and be a drone, you start your own company, and then you work on the new project, and you do it that way. So really, it's an endorsement for starting your own company. This one, I really have a lot of trouble with because a lot of people like to write really, really fancy code, and that is not what you need to do when you're out in the real world. When you're out in the real world, you need to make it work. Just make it work. Just get it to work. If you can do that, if you can actually get something to work right away, more people will come knocking at your door than otherwise. First make it work, then make it fast, then make it better, then make it smaller, then make it cheaper. First make it work. Show me a workable, viable prototype. That is what people pay for. That is what got me $1 million of venture capital, because we could show a viable working prototype of a device that scanned your fingerprint for identification. It's really, that's all it really takes. Well, yeah, we had the business plan and all that other stuff, and that was fine. But really, we could actually sit down with the venture capitalists, have the PC running, plug in the fingerprint, put your finger on there, and about 9 times out of 10 have it work. And so that was pretty good. And so that's how we actually got funding. Try to be code agnostic. Don't be so bent on using the code that you're using today. So most of the code that you're actually using today may not actually exist by the time you're out in the real world for 10 years. So yeah, you can use what you're coding today, but try to think more in general terms. Try to think in terms of solving the problem easily, solving the problem quickly, doing it that way, and if you can, then great. It wasn't the eBay talk, I told you. This one I think is probably the most important lesson of all. Make something up. When you're working at a big company like Motorola, and this is what happened at Motorola, we had a big project, and the project was to re-engineer all the phones within Motorola. Get rid of all the legacy phones that existed in the 80s, make brand new phones that were completely different. Why? Because the phones in the 80s tended to be a conglomeration of code that every single engineer would attribute something to, and therefore they had their own ways of getting to that particular program. So all the old Motorola phones, which of course you probably have never seen in your life, ran on commands that you had to press 4 or 5 keys to get to. 512, and that would get you this menu, or 314, and that would get you that menu. And it was completely hard to use, and no one understood the phones. It was really a mess. So they decided to start over from the ground up, build in a reliable operating system, put in nice application layer and services and so forth. And so the team that came up with this phone, and we were part of the team, we were doing the low-level services in the phone, we were given a paragraph of about 4 or 5 sentences about this big in an email. This is what you have to do. A paragraph of 4 or 5 sentences contained nothing. It didn't have any viable information. It was silly. It was kind of like, yeah, just make this part connect to that part and it'll all work great. There were no requirements. There were no guidelines. There was nothing in it. And you're sitting here with a team of people ready to work on this project, and here's your little paragraph, and you're staring at this on your screen going, what the hell am I supposed to be doing? And so I go railing into my manager's office, and I say, there's nothing here. What are we supposed to be doing? And he looks at me and he goes, make something up. What did that really mean? It meant that he was saying, it's yours. You can do it. You're in charge. That was kind of important, because if you're in charge, you can write all the requirements. You can create the project plan. You can tell people what to do. And if you don't know this already, this is what's going to happen in your first job. There probably won't be someone standing over your shoulder saying, I want the following, this, 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 this. Now, if you're working for a big government contractor, yeah, that's already set in stone. But if you're working for other companies, and especially small, agile firms, startups, what have you, it's going to be up to you to make something up. It's going to be up to you to drive the team. It's going to be up to you to write the requirements, to plan the test cases, to put the whole thing together. And by doing that, by accepting that, you become the lead. You become the one that everyone goes to. You become the one who answers the questions. You're in charge. So it was kind of a cop-out that my manager said make something up, because he wouldn't even want to do any work. But we'll get to that in a minute. The point is that you're in charge of your destiny. You're in charge of creating the project. You're in charge of writing the code. You're in charge of doing everything. You're in charge. But no one's going to tell you that. I'm telling you, make something up. There's nobody there that's going to say no. They're just kind of waiting for you to learn the lesson that you can do what you want, that you can create, that you can contribute, that you can build something and produce something for the company and make it better. So stand up and do it. Don't wait for someone to tell you what to do. It's a very interesting prospect. You're in charge. Don't write long emails, for God's sakes. Why? Number one, nobody reads them. Number two, if you make it 2 or 3 sentences, somebody will read it, and you might get your message across. Save the big, long dissertations for white papers and other presentations. Learn to write really, really short emails to get your point across. It sounds simple, but it's pretty hard, because you really want to get the point across in a short amount of space. So this is kind of one of those tough ones, because engineers tend to be very verbose. What's the answer? Anybody? Don't give up. Keep trying. Keep going. Just keep going. If at first you don't succeed, try again. Do it over. Do it better. Do it different. Try a different language. Try a different compiler. Try a different machine. Try anything. Just keep doing it over and over and over again. Never let a piece of code sit there too long. You want to come back to it. You want to see if you can make it better, fix other bugs, work on other projects. Just keep going again and again and again. So, this is a very interesting industry that we're in, but we really all want to make some money, right? Retire when we're 50. Great. How do you do that? You look for exponential growth. Where is the change occurring such that the change is so fast and so great, the wave just overtakes everybody else? Okay, we already saw this in the PC industry. The PC industry, personal computers, great. The personal computers are dead. What's taken over? Mobile. Now we see that. So what's next, right? So, how many of you read Wired? So here's Wired is always trying to predict what's next, which I think is kind of interesting. So here's a machine that you can buy for $1,300 that will allow you to manufacture things at home. Now, it doesn't manufacture a whole lot, but it makes small things, probably about 5 inches by 5 inches by 5 inches in size. It's made out of plastic. But it's $1,300. So it sits on your desk, and now you have personal manufacturing. And the point is that all you can really make with this is coffee cups and little toys. Nothing important. But you have machines like this already that also cost only a few $1,000s that can print in metal. And they have examples in the article about things they've made in metal. You can actually print with stainless steel, for example. So you can print three-dimensional objects in stainless steel. Okay, so now I can print objects in plastic. I can print objects in stainless steel. Well, then I'm a step away from printing electronic circuits. And I'm a step away from printing cases and toasters and appliances. And if everybody has one of these in their home, what happens to Walmart? The only thing that Walmart's going to sell are boxes to make things. And so this is kind of like the printing explosion that occurred when color inkjet printers came about, and HP made boatloads of money off of printers by selling the ink. So what if these boxes are now $99? Remember, they're only $1,000 today. They could be $99 3 years from now, 4 years from now. And you buy a $50 to $100 cartridge, which is filled with plastic and metal and other materials. You put it in here, you pull down a design off the internet, and you print a toaster. Yeah, exactly. Unbelievable. Those of you who are looking for a dissertation project, that would be really amazing. Print me a toaster. You've got mechanical issues. You've got electric issues. You've got heat issues. You're trying to create heat inside the toaster. If you could create a machine that printed a toaster, then how far away are we from printing an automobile, printing a bicycle, printing a refrigerator, printing a microwave oven, printing a remote control because you lost your other remote control for the television that you've already printed? All right? So now what do we do? If every single person has one of these at home, there is no more manufacturing. It's personal manufacturing. And now everyone's paying an awful lot of money to buy these devices and to buy the ink cartridges which print their next appliance. Your own coffee cup. That doesn't sound too exciting. So instead, the industry changes from large-scale manufacturing to small-scale manufacturing, and we all become designers. Now you can put your design of a coffee cup up on the web, someone downloads it, you get a royalty, and they've made their own coffee cup. Design and flexibility and customization become the way, as opposed to the fact that when I walk into Walmart today and I can only choose between 5 different toasters. There's only 5 designs available to me. I'd rather have 1 million designs available to me. And now you can make a tremendous amount of money. So, I don't know if this is true or not, but boy, it sounds pretty appealing. I'd like to be able to print a toaster when I need it. I'd like to be able to print a replacement part for something that breaks in my house when I need it. And what happens to UPS? Yeah. Well, now they're only shipping printing cartridges back and forth. So, think about it. This one's kind of iffy. Can you afford it? So I'm sure a lot of people have at least read or at least heard about Steve Jobs' biography. And in it, he does tend to be a bit of a jerk at times. And so did Bill Gates. And so did a lot of other CEOs. And leaders of big companies. And they want to sit there and gripe at people all the time, trying to make them work harder, do better, whatever. Okay, but you're not the CEO. At least right now you're not. So, do you really want to be a jerk? Can you really afford that? Probably not. So what you want to be is the nice guy. You want to be the guy that helps people. Oh, that's how we turn out. I don't know. It just bothers me. There's a lot of psychopaths running around running, companies. Which leads me to my next point. So, okay, yeah, back in the day, my college roommate and I started a company with no money and just the idea that we would write code for people and be consultants. And by the end of 5 years, we had 8 employees, and we were doing pretty well, and we had lots of contracts, and we were building cool stuff, like the fingerprint scanner we mentioned before. Except, we had a problem. Partner liked to spend money. I like to spend all the money. And pretty soon, the company went out of business. I didn't know that about him. And I really should have found out that about that person before I went into business with him, because he spent all the money. And what are you supposed to do? Well, you couldn't do anything. The company went out of business. That was that. It was too bad. So you really got to pick your partners very, very well. I don't really know how to do that. That's really kind of an open question here. How do you know when people react well to something? How do you know when people react badly to something? I'll give you another example. In the state of Illinois, if you are an officer of the company, the president, the vice president, CEO, whatever, you are personally responsible for the payroll of your employees. Let me state that again. You, as an officer of the company, are personally responsible for the payroll of your employees. That's a law. That is specifically a law to prevent upper management of a company from taking all the money and just leaving. You're not allowed to do that in Illinois. In fact, you're not allowed to do that in a lot of states. It's very underhanded. You have to pay your employees first before you pay yourself. Okay? So, I worked for another startup after my first one that ran out of money. And I'm sitting there working, and there's no paycheck. And then another month goes by, and there's no paycheck. So now 2 months have gone by, I don't have any money, The company still is struggling, trying to find some financing to move forward, but they haven't paid anybody in 2 months. So what do? You leave. All right? You leave. If the company isn't paying you, you get up and you walk out the door. So if they don't have the financing, they don't have you. If you want to stay, then you better be getting equity. And if you're not getting equity, you're a volunteer. Be very, very careful about that. If you're being paid and they don't pay you, why are you staying? You should leave. So I left. Now, I haven't been paid for 2 months. But I'm legally obligated to be paid, right? They're supposed to be paying you. So what do? You call up the state office of labor and you say, hey, I haven't been paid for 2 months. The company's still in business. They're still running. There are still people over there not being paid. And I didn't get paid for 2 months. I would like to be paid for my 2 months. That's your legal right as an employee to be paid. If someone says, here's your job, I'm going to pay you every month for this amount of money, and they don't pay you, you have the right to complain to the state. So the state said, no problem. We'll call them up. So they call them up, and we get on the phone with a vice president of the company, somebody who was hired after me. Okay, no, somebody who was hired after me. I'd been there 2 months. I leave. They hire someone as a new vice president. How are they paying that person? Well, let's skip over that. We don't know, right? So here's the new vice president on the phone with the state of Illinois and me. We're having a nice little conference call. And the state says to Mr. New Vice President, oh, by the way, did you know that you are responsible for this gentleman's salary for the last 2 months? And the guy goes, no, I'm not. They go, sir, yes, you are. This is state law. So you see, when the state comes over and says to the new vice president, I'm picking on Ray here, Mr. New Vice President Ray, how come you haven't paid this guy? Well, the company doesn't have any money. Well, that's not an excuse. Why is that not an excuse? Well, it's not an excuse because the law states that he is personally responsible for my salary. He, the vice president, is personally responsible for my salary. Wait a minute. The vice president says, and he hangs up. Suddenly, they didn't have a vice president anymore. He actually quit the next day because he was not aware of the laws in the state in which he was doing business, and he was not aware of the fact that that company had a liability based on the employees that they weren't being paid, and he was now personally liable. The fact that he was hired as a vice president meant that the state could actually go and claim all of his personal property to help pay my salary. Aha, yeah, that's a big deal. So one of the things that I didn't put in the talk, besides picking your partners very, very carefully and knowing how they would react in bad situations, is you ought to know the laws in which you run your company. You ought to know how to deal with very bad problems. You ought to have a really good lawyer. You ought to have a really good accountant. Those should be your two best friends, a lawyer and an accountant. Because they're there to make sure things run smoothly. When things don't run smoothly, they help step in and try to help you. Mr. Vice President here didn't have a lawyer. Mr. Vice President didn't ask the question, what are the financial straits of this company currently? Do you have enough money to pay your employees? If the answer was no, I wouldn't want to work there, even as an employee or a vice president. Why should I work there? So it's really great to start your own company. It's really great to get out there and be a consultant and build new products and start the next Google and do all those wonderful things. But if you don't have the money and you hire someone and you promise to pay them, you are now legally obligated to do that. And as engineers, we tend to overlook those things. Okay, that's fine. That's why you go get yourself a friend and go get yourself an accountant and a lawyer, and you'll be happy. Okay, but everything's going fine. You've got your company, you've built your products, but you've kind of ignored something, and that's price. So we were building this little device that would scan your fingerprint, and we were hooking it up to a computer and thinking the government would buy loads of these things because obviously they need to protect their data. Great idea, protecting your data. You can only log in using a biometric device. We had the prototype, it ran fine, we had the software, except for one little thing. It cost about $2,500 to build one of these devices. Well, at the time, a personal computer cost about $2,500, as they still do today, a good one. And therefore, a peripheral, which is what this device was the same price as the device it was protecting. But a peripheral should cost how much? About 1/10 the price of the computer. No one really ever told us that that was a problem. In fact, no one told us that was a problem, including the venture capitalists. So the very people who were giving us the money to make the device didn't realize that the device was overpriced for the marketplace. Oops. Needless to say, that device didn't go very far. As engineers, you don't know how to price your product, go get a marketing guy. And maybe they can help you figure out what the price should be. I'll take Secrets of the Universe for 100, Alex. The answer is no burdens. The question is, what is my job? My job is to never put a burden on my manager. Right? You should just make everything go as smooth as possible. If you make everything go as smooth as possible, your manager will love you. Now for 200. The answer is removes obstacles. Who are we talking about? You're talking about your manager. The good managers make sure there aren't any obstacles in your way. They give you the resources. They give you the materials. They give you the people. They give you the training. They may even give you the requirements, although some don't. And they'll make you a good employee by getting all those obstacles out of the way so that you can actually do your job. Would you rather have a manager who removes all those obstacles and gets all those nasty things out of your way, or would you rather have the manager that walks up to you and says, "Are you done yet? Are you done yet? Are you done yet? Are you done yet?" I actually had a manager that did that. So you'd have a deadline, he'd walk into your office every hour. "Are you done yet? Are you done yet?" Literally, he did. It was terrible. You don't want to be micromanaged. So you want the guy that sees the big picture, sees the obstacles coming along, and gets them out of your way. This isn't a hard one. You got to really love what you do. Why? Because you're going to be getting up every day and doing it for the next 30 years. Unless, of course, in 4 years, you make a company and sell it to Google for $1.5 billion. Which can happen. You want to be the person that gives. You want to be the person that knows the answer, knows who to talk to, knows where the bodies are buried, knows how to fix things. You want to be the person that gives back to the other people in the company. If you become that person and they come to you for the answers, you become very, very well connected in the company. You become the go-to guy. Give back to other people around you. Help them. Get rid of their problems. Make their issues go away. And in a sense, you're becoming that manager who helps other people to remove those barriers. So, you're done doing all that stuff. You've had a great time at the company. It's time to move on. When do you move on to your next job? It's going really well. When the economy is doing really well. If you think about the tech bubble, the run-up from 1994 to 1999, 1999 is the time you change jobs. Right at that top of the peak when the economy's really going great, everybody's employed, labor force, low employment, people are getting good bonuses, people are getting good job offers. That is when you jump ship. And then you hunker down until the next wave comes along. I know you probably haven't experienced it because you're still in school, but these waves come all the time. They go up, they go down, they go up, they go down. Look for when the economy is doing well. And at that point, make your move. Why? You're going to get a better job. You're going to get more money. Do much better. So always make that move on the upswing, not on the downswing. You. Oh, look, a LinkedIn connection. So, any questions? I know that was a lot to take. You know, that's essentially 30 years worth of career advice smushed into one little talk. Yes, sir.
How long did your first startup survive?
The first startup survived with me 5.5 years, and without me 6 years. So essentially, they only lasted another 6 months after I left the company. So he basically was spending all the money, and he spent the rest of it after I left. And at that point, he went out of business. So it's a tough lesson to learn, but it happens. Yeah. So. Yeah, the issue with getting rid of obstacles is that sometimes you won't be able to get rid of all the obstacles. You personally won't have necessarily the connections, which is why you only want to reach up to management if you haven't been able or been successful to get rid of that obstacle. So that's when you go to the boss, and that's the rare time that you burden the boss with the problem. I need some help with this. How do I get rid of this obstacle? Now the problem is that you got to be a political animal and know when to push and when not to push. So you can definitely get your boss upset. We can talk about the issues of our broken cluster, and how we're trying to get that fixed and how we're not having a good time fixing it. So we're pushing, but it's not working. So now what do? I don't know. Yes, sir. Well, the biggest mistake I would have made was picking the partner. If you're going to pick a partner that's going to spend all your money, what is the point of being in business? He had to learn fiscal responsibility. Okay, he didn't learn the fiscal responsibility. I mean, the other mistake could be, why did I stay at a company that wasn't paying me for 2 months? I mean, that was a pretty bad mistake. I mean, financially, that was really ruinous for myself personally. But there were other people that stayed at the company for 4 months who didn't get paid. So, that's kind of tough. Definitely find yourself a lawyer, find yourself an accountant. Why? You're not a lawyer, you're not an accountant. Let somebody else do that work. Those were really good decisions. The worst decisions, bad hiring mistakes. That, hiring someone is really, really hard. They can have the best skills, they can write the best code, but you can't get along with them. They're annoying, they're aggravating, they have their little quirky habits. My sister worked at a company in which they hired someone who really was problematic. So much so that it scared the company so much that after they finally got rid of this troubled person, they had to enforce a personality test for all new people coming into the company. They wanted to know, I know it sounds funny, I know. You have to take a personality test. Are you a nice person or a bad person? Do you get upset at things or don't get upset at things? Hiring people is really, really tough. It's a gut feel on a lot of levels, past the skill issue. But yeah, you can hire a lot of bad people. That's really a hard one. It's really tough. But yeah, and then if you hire someone bad and they don't work out, what do you have to do? You have to fire them. Oh, do you know how hard it is to fire someone? It's twice as hard than hiring them. So spend the time to hire good people so you don't have to fire them. Firing is horrible. You got to bring in lawyers, and it's terrible. Yeah, it's messy. It's not good. So that's hard. You got to fire someone. It's not a bad decision. It was a bad decision that I hired a person that didn't work out. That was the bad decision. And then it was a bad decision that now I have to fire the person, and I caused myself all this trouble and grief and anxiety. First line, you jump on LinkedIn, you talk to all your friends. How's it going at your company? How's it going at your company? Really. You ask your friends, and by asking your friends how it's going at the other company,
so basically
you find out how it's going. You learn that it's going, yeah, we're hiring a bunch of people. We're giving everybody bonuses. I mean, yeah.
you research on that, so you are trying to look.
Well, and that gets back to going to a company that is forward-looking, has the R&D budget, is doing interesting things. But by talking to the people in your LinkedIn network, you find out how you get into that company. You find out where the resume is going to go. You find out who the manager is going to be. You find out all those things inside the company that you can't see from the outside. You have to talk to people personally, and that's how you make the connection to get that job. And it's really surprising how well it works. It's just amazing. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
So
Yes.
the consulting ones.
Yes. Why did I continue doing startups? Really good question. Yes, I really probably should have continued to do startups. I really should have. Because to this day, doing that startup was the best job I've ever had. And I had a really good job at Motorola, and I had a pretty good job at Yahoo as well. But running your own company is so rewarding and so fulfilling and so much fun. You cannot believe how much fun you have. You have absolute freedom to do whatever you want in any way that you want. You get to make all the decisions. Not just some of the decisions, all of them. Do I buy this furniture or not? Do I get a new phone? Do we need a bigger office? I mean, you get to decide everything. It is a blast. When should you do a startup? When you have the least to risk. You don't have any money. You don't have a car. You don't have a house. You don't have a family. Didn't have any of those things. And I was doing the startup with my college roommate, and we were happy, 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 and it was a blast. And within those 5 years, I ended up with a family. And now I had something to risk. And thus, your mindset changes. So really, the time to do the startup is now. Right now. While you're in school. Start the next company. While you're in school. If Zuckerberg can do it, so can you. If Michael Dell can do it, so can you. And if I could do it, literally, I literally got my degree and just started a company. Didn't have any money. Nothing. I had some student loans, yes, a small amount, and I should make that statement. It was a very small amount. It was a trivial amount of money. But really, the car at the time I had was a 1969 Chevy Bel Air. It was a two-tone car, white and rust. It was just great because I had a car and I had an apartment and I had my own company. Oh, it was fabulous. It was just fabulous. I cannot stress to you how much fun this was. Just brilliant. We had the best time. And if you deny yourself that opportunity, I think you will regret it. Now, stuff's going to go wrong. And you're going to have good days and bad days. And you're going to hire the wrong people. And you're going to make bad deals. Yeah, so what? Keep moving on. Keep going. Keep trying. With zero business experience, none. I took no business classes while I was here. We had no right to start our own company. In any shape or form, we had no right to start our own company. We went out and in 5 years had 8 employees. Unbelievable. Even I wouldn't believe that that would happen. It was fantastic. It was just fantastic. Yeah. If you have the glimmer of an idea for starting a company, by all means, do it. And don't wait. And if you need some advice, I'm on LinkedIn. There's another question over here? Maybe not? Anything else? Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
In order to do the startup,
Yeah. But that's why you also have, your network of friends and classmates, and you have to pitch it to them. And you have to say what's important, how you really believe in this idea, and pitch it to them and say, okay, can I get some help on this? And then someone says, yeah, I could spend a few hours doing this. It should be your hobby. While you're in school, it should be your hobby. I'm going to spend a couple hours a week working on my hobby, and we're going to get together and we're going to talk about it, and we're going to work on it. For gosh sakes, the internet browser was invented here by a couple of guys who were sitting around in grad school with nothing to do. Right? The venture capitalists made the deal to create Netscape down the street on Green Street in a bar. I worked with the guy who said to Mark Andreessen, hey, you know what? You should make that a graphical browser. The person sitting next to you will have that other great idea. This guy was working with Mark Andreessen, and he says to Mark Andreessen, who hasn't come up with the idea of a graphical browser yet, I might add, says to Mark Andreessen, here, make it a graphical browser. Changes the world. That one sentence changed the way the internet was perceived around the world. Why don't you make it a graphical browser? Your roommate, your classmates will say to you, well, why don't you take that idea and then do this to it? Ah, that's great. Be open to new ideas. Ask people for their input. And then when you take that product and you make something out of it, make sure you recognize that person. You all remember what happened to Mark Andreessen and the browser issue with the University of Illinois, don't you? Oh, lots of blank stares. So Mark Andreessen makes the graphical browser here at the University of Illinois. But who owned the browser? So the university claims. All of your classwork, all of your independent work is owned by you. Did you know that? It is yours. It is your invention. If, however, the university gives you a job and gives you a computer, i.e. resources, and you invent that thing while you're working for the university, while you're being paid for the university, on the university's dime, it is now the university's. And that was the argument that the university ended up losing. Because a lot of the work that Mark Andreessen did was not on the university's dime. And therefore, the university didn't own the browser. So that was a landmark case, and it caused a lot of universities who were suddenly seeing the fact that internet software could be very, very, very valuable, had to put into place new procedures and new policies to make sure that everyone knew what the guidelines were. Your classwork and your work done outside of the university is not owned by the university. Always do your work on your own laptop. Right? Right? Don't use the university's resources to create the next great thing. And this is coming to you from lawyers. So lawyers have defined this boundary line. What you do on your own time is not the university's. And oh, by the way, I had my same problem with that. I wrote a program for a class project on my own, and somebody take it from me. And I had to go to the university and argue my position, saying, I did this on my own. This was classwork. This wasn't university paid for. They said, you're absolutely right. And they had to kind of go back and say to the professor, you can't do that. It happens. I didn't even put that on a slide. I'm giving you more. See, I'm using it all up for the next lecture. Any more questions, please? Yes, sir.
When you hired your first business guy for a startup?
Oh, when did you hire the first business guy? That's a really good point. We ended up hiring a guy to help run the company who had a lot of marketing background. He had a very strong marketing background. So he understood how to take the product and bring it into those marketplaces. He unfortunately wasn't very strong technically, and he ended up not staying with the company. Eventually, we hired a technical guy who had some business background, and he became the person that would run the company and take that product to other avenues. So it's a really good question. Do you go for the pure business guy, or do you go for the technical guy who's got some business background? And really, for us, it was the technical guy with the business background. So, look for the engineer who's got an MBA. That worked out so much better. Yeah. Anything else? Any other secret I can give away? Burning question. How do you get a raise? Let's not talk about that. Okay, thanks everybody. Appreciate it.